That's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted at all. Let's see here. Okay. Alright. And deep. Nope. Almost. Ah! All the things reset. I don't know what happened. Okay, there we go. Alright. I got that set up now. Go ahead and go here. Got that. Okay. Perfect. I think we've got everything rolling here. Let me see. Test, 1, 2. Yep, perfect. Okay. Cool. Let's see. Bring that over a little bit. Good. Have a couple of things to cover this morning. So, hey, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing fabulous. Let me grab just a couple of things here. I had to do a complete restart this morning, which is funny because like that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. But there was apparently an update on Streamlabs that just had a little fun with stuff. So bear with me because I had to do a complete restart, and I also had to redo camera and a whole bunch of other stuff. And that's okay. There's no problem with that. But not as ready as I originally wanted to be. But that's okay, because like a lot of this, I find it's better to be kind of just a conversation. Hey, S-Dog. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm very happy to see you. I hope your morning, well, yeah, no, it's still morning. I hope your morning is doing well. And yeah, I'm this one's a little different. We're doing a couple of things here today, and we're going to cover some deep topics. Not that we haven't talked about deep things before. Actually, pretty much every single one of these has ended up there. But yeah, this is there's a couple of people who have reached out. So awesome. I'm very happy to hear that. My morning is doing well. I'm definitely in need of a little bit of coffee. As you're probably very aware of, last night's late night Phasmophobia Fest with Dixper ran a little long, and it was a lot of fun. But there was a short period of time between that and this, and so coffee is my friend. Coffee is also my friend, Princess Coffee. But right now, this coffee is very much so my friend. Oh. So yeah, so a couple of different topics that I wanted to touch on today. One was just overall mental health awareness, and talking a little bit about some of the different types for one, especially one in particular that I feel like, first off, it doesn't always get diagnosed, but second, when it's diagnosed, the way that people think about it, the mindset that's behind there, especially for the generation like me, for those who, when they were going up through it and what they were told it meant, was very different. And that had to do with like ADHD, ADD, that sort of thing, and kind of the stigma behind what exactly that was and what that meant. Very different now as they're realizing and researching more about what that exactly is and some of the symptoms and things that go along with that, that it's not quite what I think a lot of people picture it to be. So we're going to cover a couple of things with that. Also, full disclosure, I am not a doctor. Well, I'm a Dr. Sparrow. That's as much of a doctor as I am, is the things that I create in my mind. I do not have the schooling for that. I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist, any of these things. But I do like to chat. And a lot of you have told me that you enjoy having these conversations and getting a different perspective. And that's what we're going to be doing today, is we're going to be going through perspective and, trying to look at that. I had a really great conversation with someone yesterday that was talking about, um, kind of some analogies that they had and some characters that they can relate with. And I'll talk about that a little bit later down into the stream, um, just to kind of go through. I find like characters and things of that nature can really help you connect. Because again, it gives you this outlet of like, oh wow, like that is exactly how I'm feeling. That's kind of me, but it's not necessarily a person. It's a story, right? Um, and I relate more to that. Like when I find things that I can connect with that aren't necessarily like, oh, this person is going through the same thing as me, because that's a hard thing if you really think about it. Like, oh, I've been through what you're going through. And grief is a great example, and we'll get to that in a minute. Of like, hey, I've been through, I've lost some people over the year. And this last year has been really hard. I've lost some incredible friends, friends that I consider family, friends that I knew for a very long time, who each went through their own issues and how they have come to where they are right now and how they are no longer here are very different ways that it happened, and the way that I processed and everything, and am still processing, is unique. And that's even just within yourself, the different ways that you'll process different things, such as grief. Thank you, Doc, for the hydrate. I actually have 2 cups of coffee prepared already. um, so I don't have to stop because, and I don't care if it gets cold. I am going to need them both. I can pretty much guarantee that. You've got a bit of to share about how grieving mental health issues at a time that we all need to watch for. Yep, and share away. This is an open forum, and this isn't the. I know it's just chirping and playing tunes, and obviously I'm here on camera, yay. But this is an open discussion. This is where you can ask questions of not just me, but of other folks that are here. And if you have things to share, I think it's absolutely wonderful, because we each have our own different perspective, our own story, um, and yeah, and Major, if you want at one point, because I've done this with a couple of people, if you want to jump in VC, if you're comfortable with that, I would absolutely love that. And if you're not, no worries. If you want to go ahead and type something in there, awesome. If you at one point decide like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that yet, not an issue either. And let me know when you want to, and I would love to have again another perspective on that. For today, again, we've got a couple of different things to talk about. One thing that I'll start with, because this one's come up a lot, and this has to do with like ADHD. Adult, you got attention deficit hyperactive disorder. It's a very long name. And it can cause a lot of different issues, and it goes undiagnosed a lot of the time. Or some people used to think like, oh, it gets diagnosed all the time for everything, and it's just kind of a catch-all. And I think that may be slightly true in the fact of what people think it meant it was, as opposed to what it actually was. So we'll talk a little bit about the symptoms and whatnot. Now, as far as the symptoms go, if you look at textbook stuff, right? Um, Lack of focus, which is the one where a lot of people kind of hone in on, right? Um, and again, we'll go back to that. Time management has some issues. There can be issues with organization. Impulsivity is another one. Because of impulsivity, you get into, maybe impulsive decisions, like, oh, I like this thing, I want to do this thing right now, and that's what I absolutely need to do. That can cause maybe some rage, not necessarily at other people, but also at oneself. Forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is an interesting one, because of the fact that it's not just that you're forgetting about the thing that you were going to do, it's just that you took this different path suddenly, because again the focus wasn't there. And so it's not that you're just forgetting things, it's like, no, like, I was going to go to point B, but then I had to go over to point C real quick because this was not, oh, but then I forgot I needed to take care of this real quick, and like, oh, but this is something that we were talking about a week ago, and that was really cool, and let me take a look at that real quick, and then, oh, there was something I was going to be doing before. Oh yeah, that's right, it was over there. And that gives you kind of an idea behind that. Now, Major, I see that you're sharing a little bit, so I want to hone in on this real quick. Good morning, John. So when I was 16, I met my high school sweetheart. We were together a year and a half, and I proposed, and she said yes. We were meant to be married at the age of 18, and during the time she was going with her father to get family from Arizona, and on the way, a drunk driver rammed the car, and she didn't make it. And her father did. And when I learned about it, I grieved very hard. I drank well over what a human should to the point that I wanted to end, and I tried to crash a car, too, to be with her. She was also pregnant with my only child, too, but I didn't know about it until all this happened, and it was a wedding gift kind of thing. Major. That's incredible that you shared that, man. That's a lot. The, take this off for a second here. I'm going to stop talking for a second here because I'm not sure if you've got more to share on that. You didn't share this until last year and held it to yourself for over 14 years. Hmm. With grief, now I'll add just a couple of things here while in case you're typing more. With grief, there's a lot of different stages that you go through when you go through grief. One of them can be the first one, which you don't always go through. Can be shock or denial. Um, and that's an interesting one because it's not necessarily what you think of, like, just, oh, it didn't happen. Um, but you'll find that you'll often withdraw from different behaviors. You'll kind of isolate yourself. You'll isolate your feelings and kind of bottle them up, put them away. And sharing is not necessarily something that you want to do. So I can understand that, and that's a lot. And you isolated everything, and you were basically a mime. That's not surprising on the mime. It's very common for people to they subconsciously avoid sadness. Um, and the thought of pending mental struggles. They don't want to bring that sadness to other people. Um, they want to kind of just bring it in so that they don't bring others down. Maybe they also, that's just how they internalize it. It can cause fear, anxiety, anger. There's a lot that goes along with grief and how you process it. And so I understand with that, Major. So if you've got more to type on here, I actually have some questions if you don't mind. But if you're typing more, I want you to get out because I want you to be heard. This is very important to me on this platform. Is that you have an opportunity to be heard. And S-Dog, I absolutely would love to know a little bit more. Okay. So 14 years, while that seems like a very long time for a lot of people, with something as dramatic and powerful as what you shared, um, that's not necessarily a very long time at all. What caused the difference? What made it so that you felt that, not necessarily that you had acceptance, but that you realized, because acceptance is a good word, but it's not that you're necessarily not experiencing grief anymore, um, and that you're not like holding on to that thing and that you just let it go, because that's not what that means. Um, but after that period of time, was there something in particular that made it so that you're like, yes, I feel I'm at the point where I can share this? And what was that? Was it time? Was it people? Was it something that you internalized? That's interesting to me, and I'd like to know, um, if you know what might have had that change. And I know this might take a second to type out, um, you know, and I understand that there's no simple answer to that. Um, Even what seems like a simple answer is not necessarily a simple one. Um, and it's also, even though I said the word acceptance, it's not necessarily like, if you're still going through it even at that time, it's not that it's done, but it's you're still going through a healing process. I figured that if I can share something as heavy hitting as what I experienced, it could help others as well. And what made me accept it finally was finding an old picture of her and getting a phone call after 10 years from her father saying that I was still his favorite son. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful, Major. First off, thank you. And I agree, I do think it can help others as well. Sometimes finding things that can give you memories can really make a big difference. And I'll talk about that in a second, but this is not my time right now. This is your time. Because I can give some perspective. It's a different perspective, but there's something that you touched on in there that has me thinking. I love how Nightbot's trying to get you all to do weird sounds while we're having this beautiful conversation. Oh, so S-Talk. When I was diagnosed with autism in middle school, I was bullied a lot. I was to the point where I was hurting myself and wanting to take my own life. Sometimes to this day, I feel sometimes that way, but I try hard to keep myself from doing that. And that is why I do a lot of art or talk to a lot of people. While both of you have very different things as far as what caused you to have those kind of thoughts. Um, we'll talk a little bit more into that. So, long story short, grieving and mental health is huge for anyone, even the ones that don't show that they have an issue, like me. So, please don't take it for granted and go alone. Lean on friends and family for support, and someone will always listen. It's a big deal, Major. I completely agree with that. And S Dog, I want to touch on that in a second here. But there's a couple of things that I'd like to kind of talk about for a second. And then I want to go over to S Dog, and then I might have some more questions for both of you if that's okay. But I want to focus in on that because I think it actually does go into a little bit with what you were talking about too. It's hard when you're going through grief of any type and the spiral that your mind can take and the different areas where you go. Um, it's overwhelming. It's one of those things where you yourself might feel like you are in the back seat of a speeding vehicle and you can see everything that's going on, but you don't feel that you have any control of it at that point. You can't reach the steering wheel, you can't get to the brakes, but you are very aware of the fact that you are there. Sometimes you might not be aware of it, but it's one of those things where you feel powerless. You feel like you're not in control, and so because of that, instead of trying, not necessarily trying, but instead of um, finding a way to stop the speeding car, you act as if the car doesn't exist. That you find a way to shut it out, shut it down, see something else, and kind of hide away from it, or um, you feel that you accelerate it, that you want it to end. Um, when it goes into that with grief, the depression is more of the fourth step, but you get into the third step, which is bargaining. And I know we skipped one, which is anger, right? But we'll get to that. But bargaining is one that's kind of interesting because with bargaining, you're making a bargain with the universe. You're making a bargain with yourself of like, well, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to go through this anymore. I don't want to face the consequence head on. I want it just to be done. And, so I'm not coping with it. So let's make a deal. Let's find a way. Let's please take this away from me. And a lot of it's internalized. Um, and so that's part of that, where you're making a bargain. Well, if I take this away, if I take away life, then I won't have to experience that, and that's wrong. And it's not. It's a thought process that it's not uncommon, and it is. It's absolutely heartbreaking to know that people go through that. Especially like those that feel like they personally could have done something more to stop that from happening, whether it was reaching out, whether it was, well, if I had been there that day, if I had done this, if I had been a better friend, if I had simply picked up the phone and called them more, if I had done anything more, um, and having that feeling of like I couldn't do the thing to stop this from happening, but maybe I can do this thing in order to get this result. And it's never the right way. The feeling of grief and loss that you feel at that very moment for someone who is gone is not something you ever want someone else to feel. You know, everyone here in the chat, Major, S-Dog, you guys are very loving, caring people. And while I don't know, I've only known you for a short period of time. During the time that I've known you, you know, you've had an impact on me and the people around you, and that's because of who you are. And while those impacts may be larger to some people than others, depending on your interactions and whatnot, um, they're important, and you're important. And so you don't want anyone to go through what you're going through. And to do something towards the other path, the path of least resistance, um, is it's not something. There's a lot of issues with it, um, and you can get angry. You can say, "Well, it's selfish." You can, you know, it's not okay, and that, and that's a different conversation, and it's a different way to internalize. And while it's true, um, and it's not the right path in any way, shape, or form, it's more of the fact that, like, you're beautiful people. All of you are beautiful people. And there's no reason to take a star out of the sky at any point. It doesn't matter how many stars are up there. Some will dim over time, but there's never a reason to just snuff one out. And so there are other things that you can do. And Major, you touched on that, where you want to lean on friends and family for support. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't have a connection with people, or family, and it can be an either or, where you feel like you can't go to that. My a good friend of mine told me once, and I've hung on to this, and it's used in a lot of different things, with management of not just mental health, but just period. But one thing that they said to me is like, look, if you want to be king of the castle, if you want to be the master of your island, fine, you're allowed to do that. You can go ahead and be out there, and you can be in complete control. And if that's how you feel and that's what you want to do, that's great. Because you are in charge of your attitude and your actions at any point. But what you're not allowed to do is to die on that island alone. There's a support network out there of people who really want to help you. And those can be your friends and your family. And they do. They absolutely do. And you may feel that you want to go it alone, that you don't want to bring other people down, that you don't want to have them experience anything that you're experiencing, because you don't want them to also have that issue, have that pain. We have a lot of empaths in the world, and I believe quite a few of you are them as well, where we'll take emotion and we'll actually latch on to it. And that can be both good and bad. And so you may feel that your burden to bear is one that you don't want to put upon anyone else. And so you hide it. You keep it to yourself and you let it bottle up. We've talked about a lot of bottles before, where you take your jar of emotions and you seal it up, put it aside. And there's a really good movie actually, and I'm on a tangent here, but that actually really touches on that, and I had forgotten about it until last night. I was thinking about it, and there was a movie called Song of the Sea, and there is I can't remember her name for the life of me right now, but she's one of the main. Uh, I won't call her a villain per se, but she goes through something where she lashes out, and it's a great analogy for grief, where her son had lost someone, and he got so sad that he was a giant, that he would just sit there and cry, and she wanted to take the pain away. So she wanted to help find a way to do that. So she removed emotions from him. In doing so, that turned him to stone, that hardened him, and he became a mountain. And then she herself had issues because of the loss of her son and of who he was. And so she also started to take her own emotions and putting them in jars, and it would suck them out. And she would lash out, and she wanted no emotions for anyone, because if she couldn't feel emotions, then no one else should, especially with joy or happiness or anything of that nature. And so she would take all those and turn people into stone, because that was how she internalized and kept things to herself. And at one point in there is a point where the jars break, and it's actually caused, um, where the jars break. And you can see when the jars finally break and the emotions pop out, they come out hard and heavy, where sadness, joy, um, just anger, all of them come very quickly, which is a really good analogy of what actually happens when you're going through the internalization of of grief, and especially the depression point, um, where you get a lot of shock and emotions that come very violently out of you. Um, and this isn't something to be confused with like clinical depression or anything of that. This is it's episodic. It's something that, while it can last for a while, quite a while, um, it's not something that's necessarily uh, like long. It's different than clinical depression. Hey, voice. I'm happy that you're here. No apologies necessary. And so, again, going through that and keeping it bottled up, keeping it inside, it's not necessarily the way that especially when you go into thought processes where you feel that you don't want to be a burden to the world anymore, and you want to remove that burden, which is never the answer. It's never the answer. There is always another way. Always. There are resources that are out there. Some of them I put into like my Discord server, but there are a ton of different resources that are out there, and they can be very um, specific to your personal needs on who you're wanting to talk to and why. Um, but again, your friends, your family, we're here for you. You know, a lot of you, I consider you family. You guys are absolutely wonderful. You're a crazy eclectic little group here, that has their own personalities, and everyone has something a little bit different that they bring to the table, and everyone does, and we're here for each other. And I want you to know that my DMs are always open. Yes, I work. Yes, I have kids. Yes, I have a wonderful wife. I have um, a lot of really great things, and sometimes I get busy, and so do we all. But just know that when I have a chance, I am absolutely here to respond, and I want to hear you out. so you don't have to go it alone. And Major, I it's important to know that, and it was wonderful of you to share that. It took a long time, and grief isn't necessarily something that you get over quickly. You can, and it's not necessarily that you ever actually fully get over it. It's just that there is a certain sense of acceptance. And so that was really beautiful that you shared that. Now, S Dog, there's a couple of things that we talked about there that parallel with that as far as making sure that we reach out. And I love the fact that you personally, you do a lot of art and you talk to people. Those are, and the talking to people is wonderful. And it's important, like, to know that each of us has our own way of dealing with how we are able to deal with things that have an effect on our mental health. Now, Major, to be honest, I do accept it, but I'm never over it. As much as something does fill my heart now, there is a small piece that can't be filled. And that's okay. And let's be honest, there is a person there that you care deeply for who is no longer here. And it's not that they're necessarily gone forever. There's, and I want to talk about that in a minute too. But it's you recognize that that part is gone, and it's okay to recognize that. It's okay to feel that. It's something where, in all honesty, it's a way of honoring and remembering them. Is acknowledging that, but there is an acceptance where you can't necessarily recover the life that you once had with that person because they're not there anymore. But you're not necessarily looking backward to only focus on that and only go and grab the thing that you once had, which you can't. It's not that you no longer feel those emotions that brought on or that were brought on by the grief. But you're at a point where you're ready to embrace something new. Not that you're moving on. I don't think moving on is something that anyone really does. It's not that you're moving on. I'd say that you're moving forward. Because you're no longer trying to look backward and grab that which you don't have. And there becomes an understanding and an acceptance that it's okay to feel the way that you feel. And it's okay to remember. And it's okay to still be going through even a portion of grief. And to remember and to be sad and to want to look back. But it's also important to move forward and to keep going and to continue on. And you can do that in different ways. And again, with S Dog, for her, it's art and talking and getting those emotions out and talking to people that way. For some people, it can be music. It can be writing. It can be lots of different art forms. Something that you love, that you can feel and you can share, and you can find a way to get your emotions out. Sometimes on paper, sometimes in words, sometimes in just expression, and sometimes just with a chat. It's hard for a lot of people who aren't going through what you're going through to know exactly what they need to do as well. And this is interesting because this gets into uh, a part where, as you're talking to some folks, there's a lot of people out there that really want to help, but they sometimes want to help in the ways that are not necessarily helpful. Communication is a big thing on that. I'd say that the biggest thing that I go with listening, and I try and do this, and I agree with you, Major, is that someone will always listen. Um, it's important that when your friends come to you to talk about anything of this, that you do give the opportunity for them to speak. So, and I want to hear a lot more about your story, S Dog. I want to give you the floor here in a second, if you're okay with that. I want to give you a wee bit of time. Um, you want to be able to listen. Actually, this is important right now, and this is what I'm talking about. Is you want to be able to listen. So with that, I'm going to actually stop, and I want to actually hear from you now. I might say a couple of things while you're typing, but I'm going to stop in as soon as I see the words that are on the screen. It's important to listen with the intent of listening to someone and not necessarily responding. Sometimes that's all someone needs. They just want to get it out. They're not looking for an answer. They're not looking for you to give them the key to the castle that they can open and suddenly have this new life. Sometimes they're just looking for an outlet for them to go ahead and share. And not always. Sometimes people are looking for actual answers. Sometimes they are reaching out for a lifeline and seeing if you'll have input. It varies, but that's why you have to listen, because you won't know what they want if you don't give them the opportunity to speak. That's important. It really, really is important. So don't go in with the idea of, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'll hear this person out, and then this is the direction I want to go in order to help them. Because that's not, you're not going in for a sales pitch. You're not overcoming objections in order to get to the end result that you personally want for that person. That's not what listening's about. So let's see here. So after my mom and dad got divorced, one side of my family decided it was a good idea to take it out on me, even to this day. My grandma, on my dad's side, verbally abuses me, and that's why I hate holidays mostly. She has said I'm worthless, like fat, ugly, useless, and cornered me in a room where I can't get out, and that's why. Doc, I'm really touched that you wanted to share that. And I know you probably have a lot more. And I want you to be able to keep going. I want you to know, and I'm sure you know, that absolutely none of that is true as far as what she said. You're important. You're worth a lot. You are definitely not ugly at all. You're a very beautiful person. But I don't want to say anything more on this in case you have more to type. So I'll give you a second. more than a second. I cup 2 now. Well, almost cup 2. Hold on. I'm really touched while I'm waiting here that you all are sharing as much as you are. I love this sort of forum where we have the ability to get things out there that we want to talk about and have an opportunity to get stuff off of our chest and out there and just talk about it. It's wonderful to have this sort of platform for us to come together and do this. Because it's important to do stuff like this. It's important to be able to talk and to be heard. It really is. So let's see here. I have a feeling there's a little bit more to this. A little bit is not necessarily the correct words there. It's hard. The way that other people also internalize their own sense of grief and their own sense of loss. Loss is not always necessarily the loss of a life. Loss is something where you've lost something of yourself or of another person. Maybe the type of life that you had. It's different than the loss of a person. And even the loss of a person is different than the loss of another person. But the cycle of abuse, and I do definitely call it a cycle, where somebody goes through something and then they lash out. It's interesting and it's different. We'll touch on that later down the road. So that's why I'm nervous about my birthday next month, is because I'm always afraid I'm going to get hurt by her. Also, a few years ago, my mom remarried, and I have to deal with 3 little step siblings around now. So them not understanding me being autistic or anything of that nature is very hard for you. I can understand that. Well, that's a valid fear. It's a valid concern. Especially with during the holidays and getting together like that. I know that this is something that you're sharing with me. I'm going to assume, which actually that's a terrible word. I would hope that you've tried to have this conversation with the parents and family to see if they can assist you with that. And maybe you have, and maybe they can't, or they aren't. But it's important to at least be able to acknowledge that. You're doing it right now with us, and it's beautiful that you're able to share. It really is. It's because this is very personal. This is emotional. We talk about how art and sharing that's something that's personal and emotional, and it's something that you share with other folks, and how you can bring different emotions to them in different ways, but your own emotions can come out there. This is like that as well. Yes, I have. They said to stay away from her, but I can't do that if I want to see my dad when he comes into town. Ah, okay. Is he aware of the situation? Because it sounds like he might be. With the step siblings, that's also difficult, especially with depending on, you said little step siblings. With age, understanding is not necessarily something that people have, and having a conversation with them yourself, it's tough. So yes, he is aware, and my stepmom on that side is also, and they said to ignore it, but it's hard. Okay. Well, I can appreciate the advice on that one of ignoring. I think it's important to me. What it sounds like is that you're still not being heard, and this isn't necessarily an answer or anything like that. But I would, if I can give you any type of advice on this one, and this may not be what you're looking for, and I do apologize for that. But when it comes to abuse and it comes to that sort of thing, this is actually very important to me. And so I'll put something out there, and take it or leave it. But I would say it would be very important to have that conversation with them again, and to let them know that this is something that's very uncomfortable for me, and I know that this is coming up, and it's causing anxiety in me already, and I shouldn't have to feel that way on my birthday. And so if uh, it shouldn't just be on you to make sure that that doesn't happen, and to let them know if it's a situation where if she's alone with you and that's when that happens, then they should be aware of the fact that they shouldn't leave you alone with her. And so I recommend having that conversation again, because you shouldn't have to feel that way. Words can be just as painful as any weapon out there. And abuse is abuse. Physical abuse and mental abuse, verbal abuse, they're all on the same level of just it's abuse. I get a little passionate on this. It's not okay to tear someone down, to put them through that. A lot of the time, it can be because that person themselves has their own inner demons, and so they lash out in that sort of way because they either don't understand or they do understand and they choose not to um, cope with their own personal problems, or they are going through their own sense of grief, and they're going in a way of lashing out, and it's not okay. um, and we go through that cycle of abuse. Major, I can vouch, that's like none of those things that grandma would say. For the fact that I love her and will call her my girlfriend, I wouldn't change that for the world. That's beautiful, Major. I know that that was something that was not necessarily known, and I love that you two are sharing that right now. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Major, that none of those things that she said are true. And you should know that. And that's beautiful. And it's beautiful that you can share that here as well. I'm very happy for you too, by the way. That's fantastic. This platform, this has definitely brought a lot of people together. And I know I'm taking a little bit of a veer here, but you guys got me on a little shiny here. And we've been able to make connections, and that's fair, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's steps, right? And it's one of those things where you're comfortable when you're comfortable, and you're not required to share anything like that with anyone, because it's personal, right? You can if you want to, and it's beautiful when you do, but it's never a requirement. Um, Silly analogy, but face cams with this platform. Some people think that, like, oh well, it's necessary and whatnot. Oh, I want to see it. No, no, you're comfortable with what you're comfortable with, and you're comfortable with what you want to share it when you want to share it. And if that's just you and your voice and whatnot, not necessarily um, what you look like or anything of that nature, it's fine. I know that seems like it's very two different things, but it's not. Your emotions and the way that you feel and what you are willing to share and what you are willing to give out there, it's up to you on that. And when you're ready, if you ever are ready, then that's fantastic. And I'm really, really happy that you guys were ready to share that. Um, it's beautiful. And yes, once again I agree, Major, that none of those things are true. And I'm sorry that she made you feel upset and sad and attacked and put into a situation where you had to deal with that. It's not okay. It's not okay. No one no one has the right to do that ever. They don't. They just don't. And it doesn't matter that they may be going through their own demons and going through all those different things. You can make excuses for someone all you want. And while it's true, there can be things in their life that may be causing things and may be causing anger and depression of their own that is causing them to lash out. But again, there are two things in life that you have control over, and that's your actions and your attitude about it. And while depression and these things can make it difficult to have what I control over them, they really do. Um, it doesn't give you the right to take it out on other people. It doesn't. Period. You don't get to abuse people. It's not right. I don't mind doing face cam. I only do it for special occasions on stream, give subs, donations. I'm not worried how I look, but if I need to use it, I will. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. And I know it was different, like, and again, that's for you. That's how you feel about it. For me, obviously, I have no problem. Um, uh, which is weird because I've seen this. Oh, there's a battle of epic proportions going on here. But it doesn't bother me. It's I for me personally, because I like being in person. I like doing those sort of things, and this gives me a sense of um, having a little bit more of that connection on there. For me personally, that's how I deal with that. It's just that's how I am. She does that every time I go over there, and she usually tells me I'm fat or ugly because of me taking medicine for ADHD and autism. And that's actually another good point that I did want to touch on, that with medicine and some of the things that people go through when they are going getting help and um, finding ways to um, manage emotions and manage different things so that they can find a way to work through them and what that can do. So I'm glad that you brought that up as well at the end there. And it's sad. It's really sad that that person feels that that it's okay for them to do that. B that's something, obviously, since it's so systematic and a recurrence that happens each time, that that they need to do that. It's unfortunate, and it's something, and unfortunate is not a great word, but it is, that they feel that that's okay. Um, that that is something that they need to do. It's sad. It's really sad, and I feel sad for them that instead of being loving and thinking of things and having life as being something that's beautiful and to share and uplift people, that you want to tear someone down. It's not okay. It's not. And so while they're right, you should ignore the things that that person's saying, um, because they're not true in any way, shape, or form. Um, you shouldn't have to do that alone. She also tells me I'm useless because I don't know my path yet, and I'm not going to college yet, or have a job or a car. Why is that her? Sounds to me like she's got her own internal issues on that one, as far as what she thinks is the right path or not. And maybe that's a regret or something that she saw from somebody else, or maybe that's something that's been pounded into her head from her parents from way back in the day, or anything. But either way, she doesn't have the right to say that. You're not useless. You're allowed to find your path. You're allowed to write your story. You're allowed to write the script to your movie, the lyrics to your soundtrack, the way that you choose. And you're allowed to take your time on that. What's the rush? What is so necessary that you need to go ahead and find out how to put that peg into that box as soon as possible? When you're trying to find yourself out, when you're trying to find what you want in life, it can take time. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it can go really quick. Great. It's awesome. But everyone goes through their own journey at their own pace. And it's important to support your friends and family as they're going through their journey, to be able to help them get to the happy ending. And you don't do that by forcing them to just do what you want them to do. Each person is important, and they are the main character of their story. And when it comes to your friends and family, you have to understand that you are a supporting character, and that's okay. You are also the main character of your own story, but not necessarily of theirs, and that's fine. And that's why it is a supporting character, is you should be supported. And it's sad that she's not. I feel for her. And the reason I say that is it's heartbreaking to know that someone thinks that it's okay to be able to do that. So you're not useless. Okay? You're not. You make beautiful artwork. Again, I've only known you for a short time, Stuck, so I can't tell you all of the other amazing and wonderful things that you have probably done throughout your life. I can tell you've done them just from the way that I hear you on stream and the way that you talk and the way that you chat. But obviously, I don't know some of those things and what they are. And that's fine. And we don't have to share it on stream. We can share it afterwards. Not an issue at all. I'd be more than happy to hear. But again, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you're amazing. You're not useless. You're important. You're important to us. You're important to the world. You're important to Major. And you're important to me. So please know that. I want you to have a happy birthday. But I want you to have a happy life. And it's important for you to know that. Grief is interesting. And I tell you what, so I at this point, based on that, we'll talk more about that later. And I think I'll arc a little bit here, as I want to talk more about grief. Um, and I've got my own stories of grief. There's a few different ones that are out there. And it's interesting because each one's a little bit different as far as what we go through. There can be the grief and loss of a person, which is what I'll talk about a little bit. But again, what we talked about is that there can also be the loss of oneself and the loss of the feeling that you are alive due to abuse and whatnot. And you go through your own stages there. Loss of a friend who not necessarily passed on, but disappeared, is gone. I For me, my greatest fear is losing people, is being alone. Not necessarily alone, like stuck in like isolation or anything of that nature, but of losing people that I care about. And I can be in a sea of people, but also feel extremely alone. That is my biggest fear. I love making people happy. I love being around friends and family, and my real family. And let me restate that. My blood family. Because friends are family as well. I love making sure that they're okay, that they're on, that everything's going well with them. And I don't want to do anything that would ever cause them to want to go away. And sometimes I self-internalize that a little bit much. Because I think of actual loss, of actual people that I've lost through loss of life that I had no control over. But with these, maybe I feel like I'm the one that would push someone away. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and the importance of communication and the importance of being able to get your thoughts out and actually talk to people and being honest with yourself. But that's part of that. For me, for grief, in this last year, I lost two very close friends. And close is a relative term because we definitely didn't talk as much as we used to from back in the day. Lives change, people change, situations change. I have family and three amazing kids, and my puppers, and priorities shift and availabilities become different. And so it's not necessarily that we grew apart, but it wasn't, the conversations were not a daily thing. And so with them, it's a lot of different emotions through that. One of my friends, passed away very suddenly. Had no idea. No health issues, none of that. It just happened without explanation. And he was such a loving person. Huge family too. He had 5 kids, around the ages of my kids, and just a beautiful, like, he'd make you smile. Um, he always willing to lend a hand. He was our little, kind of Russian, lightning rod. Um, yes, he was from Russia, and he just an all around fun guy, and he would make you smile the minute you walked into a room. He could find a way to make you laugh or make you smile, because he brought this sense of positivity and just a breath of fresh air when he'd walk in. No, he wasn't always the most positive person. He had his own little demons. He when I was very wasn't very young. When I had just got out of high school and I was in community college, I was working over at Lowe's. Well, okay, when I was working over at Lowe's, I saved up enough money and I got a motorcycle, and it was a little 1980, um, Yamaha XS 400 Special. Um, which, if any of you know anything about motorcycles, it's this lovely little motorcycle that looked like a cruiser, um, and it was very pretty. It was the kind that you crank, so you had the Kickstarter on there. Um, it was difficult to use. It was a great bike to learn on because that thing handled like a drunken pig on acid. It was really bad, and I think the headlamp was actually made in the 1800s and not the 1980s, because it didn't do a whole lot. And that Kickstarter, if you were on a cold day and you were stuck out in the middle of um, an area out there, that thing could take a while to get going. It was a bit of a workout. Left leg, had a lot of fun there. But the reason I talk about that is that he was so excited for me when I got that motorcycle. Like, it was almost like it was his. But it wasn't. Like, he didn't treat it like that. But he was one of the first people that actually rode on the back of the bike, and it was really funny to watch because it's kind of a tiny bike. It's a 400. Um, and just to watch it, like, he was like, I want to ride on the back of it. And so he had a helmet that was just maybe a little bit too small on him, and so he looked so silly on the back there, but he was so ready. And so, we met at college, and I took him for a little ride on it, and it was amazing. It was really good. We had a couple of different parties that we would go to, and Halloween was a big thing. Halloween's one of my favorites. I find that a lot of my happy memories are during that time frame, because the group that I am in, or that I was in at the time too, we all had our own masks. I still do. We talked a little bit about masks, and it I don't know. It's something about being able to express yourself in a different way of characterization, of putting yourself into a character at that point and kind of having fun with it. It's an art form in itself, and especially when you don't have to, but if you make some of the things, like, I love cosplay, and like the different, especially the amount of work that people in there. There's one of our fellow streamers, Miss Night Fox. She's amazing at making cosplay stuff. I've seen some of the stuff that she does. My wife, she's a seamstress, and she makes beautiful, absolutely beautiful clothing. She doesn't have as much time as she'd like to on that, because the kids keep us busy. But it's phenomenal, some of the stuff that she makes. And but it's cool because, again, that's that type of art form. And so, with him, I remember, Army of Darkness, the Evil Dead series was something that was really big to him. And so we had a lot of little Ash cosplay. I think we actually had 5 of us were Ash once. which is very interesting. But that was the thing about like he like we would all be the same, but it was Eddie was he was very different. Um, and he just I don't know. He always wanted to make sure that everyone was having a really good time, and that's just who he was. And it's important to be able to share that. We've had people that really impact our lives who and the impact can be different, right? It can be um, something very, very like immense that has a major impact, where they are a huge part of your life on a daily basis, or even not necessarily daily, but they've really, really maybe changed you in a way, um, for better or worse. And then there are others who may not have as heavy an impact as that, but they've had an impact nonetheless. And just because um, I'm not married to someone, or that I'm not their sibling, or that I'm not somebody that sees them every single day, doesn't mean that I'm not going through something when I lose that person. But what's important is that while that person is no longer here, they had an impact, and they have a story to tell. And it's important to share that story. It's important to keep them alive through your memories and through the telling of their story. Music is one of those things for me of how I express myself. I also write a little bit, not stories, but I put my feelings down on paper, and that's a good way for me to get things out when I'm internalizing things, whether it's through music and lyrics, or through maybe something where I'm just putting down my thoughts on that. But for me, music is it's passion, and it's an expression of just who I am and what I'm going through, and of just life in general. And I put a lot of emotion into it, and I get a lot of emotion into it. I had a breakdown on stream the other day, as many of you recall, when I was singing a song that really encapsulated some of the feelings that I was going through. Um, of it was it was a very powerful song. And that's the thing, like music can do that, where it can really grab on, and it can give you an understanding and an acceptance that you're not the only one that is going through things, because you can relate to that. You can relate to movie characters. You can relate to stories. You can relate to other people. There's different things that you can relate to, which is why it's important to have that communication and that conversation, even if it's with yourself, because you have to accept it first. But for me, with some of the friends and family that I've lost over the years, and I'm tired of writing eulogies. I'm tired of going to funerals. It it's still important to be able to talk about the wonderful, wonderful impact that they had while they were here. When it comes to songs, and we've talked about this before, there are certain songs that bring out memories and emotions and help guide me through different points in my life. And the two songs in particular, with grief, um, of remembering people, um, one is very simple, and both of these are actually all the songs I'm going to talk about are Disney songs. One of them is "Remember Me," because it's important to keep that memory alive. I thought that was a beautiful analogy that they had in Coco, which really touches actually more on dementia, if you didn't know. As far as Pixar's just amazing at its storytelling and talking about different things of mental health and things that people go through. They're really, really good at it, and I think that's one of the reasons why I really am drawn to a lot of their movies, is that they really focus in on that. I feel that that's their push, and it's beautiful. But remember me of telling that story of remember, just keep me in your heart, and even though I'm not there anymore, I will always be with you. And it's really good. The other one is from Mary Poppins Returns, and it's Where the Lost Things Go. And it's when she's talking to the children who lost their mother. And my mom lost her mom when she was 16. And that was really hard. It was hard on her. It was hard on her sisters. She was in a big family. She had 4 sisters. And her dad, which that's a lot of girls for one guy. That was a joke that they used to have. And that was tough. And what was also tough, I won't say it's more tough, but one of her sisters in particular really became like a mother type figure. And she's absolutely wonderful. And I could tell so many stories about my aunt. Just a heart of gold. And she had a laugh that just brought out the best in you. And she was like a mother to my mother. And it was really hard on her when she passed on. But that's the thing is that there's so many beautiful stories that can be told. And while that person is gone, going back to what we were talking about, they're never truly gone. They're just misplaced. They're out of place. They're not necessarily where they were, which may have been right next to you or on the other side of the phone. They're no longer there, but they're not gone. And no one's ever truly gone when you keep them alive. It's a beautiful song. The last thing that, and I know we're coming up on the hour here, the last thing that I have as far as with grief, there is a beautiful song that's called The Next Right Thing. And it's one of the reasons why Aunt Anna is my favorite Disney princess. And someone asked me that question the other day, and this is why. I have not seen a better, more powerful, more relatable experience of grief than in that song at that time from that movie, which is Frozen 2. When Anna has lost Olaf and she's lost her sister, and she feels like she's lost her entire world at that moment. And the stages of grief that she's going through, the feeling of loss that she's going through, and knowing that she's lost and she feels lost and that it's overwhelming and just completely just locking you up. It's a really powerful scene, and it's one that I feel many people, including myself, have gone through when they've gone through a loss like that. And it was beautiful. And what's known on that is that, as she's talking about it, is that you don't have to move on and say that everything's okay. You don't have to forget. You don't have to keep um, the pain from ever appearing. That's not how that works. There is something that was lost, something that you're not going to be able to get back. And it's important to acknowledge that, but to acknowledge the fact that they're not completely gone, and that, wow, that happened. It happened. And you can't go back in time. While it's important to look back and remember, it's just as important to make sure that you take that step forward and that you do the next right thing. It's really important. Hmm. Acceptance is the fifth stage of grief. And again, it's not that you're not experiencing grief anymore, but it's that you're at the point where you know you can move forward and carry on. I really appreciate you all. Again, I love this platform for us to be able to come together and to be able to share and to talk and get things out, because it's important to do that. It's important not to bottle those emotions up into those jars and leave them there, because you'll just keep adding to them. Sooner or later, that jar is not going to be able to hold on to it. It's going to explode. And when it does, it can be extremely overwhelming. And it can completely just make you turn into a ball and not be able to move. You become paralyzed. Paralyzed in your thoughts, paralyzed in your mind. It's important to be able to get that out and to be able to share. And I know that's not hard, because you feel like you don't want to bring other people down, that you don't want to necessarily um, put that into them. You personally may be an empath and know how you react when people are doing things, and you want to help, but you may feel that because of that, you know that, like, when you do these things, that you don't want to necessarily give somebody that sort of emotion, that it's hard, but it's important. Self-care is important. Self-care is extremely important. And people don't know what they don't know until they're told what they don't know. And so a lot of people won't know what's going on with you if you never tell them. Don't be on your island alone, because you're not. We're here for you. We're family. I I know I normally end with a song at the end of this. Um, and I think I will. I think I will. I'm not going to bring out the ukulele today. Um, but I think I will end with a song. And let me see here. Um, I've had this one requested a couple times, but I feel it's a good one to end with. I haven't done it on here. Well, no, I think I did it on here once. Um, but people have had me do it karaoke during some streams before. But I'd like to do it again. And it was one of the ones that we talked about earlier. And so I hope you don't mind. Remember me, though I have to say goodbye. Remember me, don't let it make you cry. Forever if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart. I sing a secret song to you each night we are apart. Remember me, though I have to travel far. Remember me, each time you hear a sad guitar. Know that I'm with you the only way that I can be, until you're in my arms again. Remember me. If you close your eyes and let the music play, keep our love alive, I'll never fade away. If you close your eyes and let the music play, keep our love alive, I'll never fade away. Remember me, for I will soon be gone. Remember me, and let the love we have live on. And know that I'm with you the only way that I can be. So until you're in my arms again, remember me. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day. I want you to know that you're important, that you're special, that you're good enough, and that you're amazing. Your family, and we love you. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody. Till next time.